And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather showing a pretty strong storm, bringing storm force winds into the western Aleutians here as the front weakens considerably, pushing in toward Adak and Atka with precipitation there and winds coming down as it moves eastward. Light winds for the eastern Aleutians into the northern Bering Sea as well as the western and northern interior. And wind and rain continue to spread northward here over the southern panhandle, with snow spreading northward over the northern southeast coast. Dry south central Alaska, maybe a few snow showers for Kodiak Island. And for tomorrow, this system weakens here, the front pushing inland, so winds and precipitation diminish over the panhandle, but kind of linger here in the north with a tighter gradient. Areas of light snow over the eastern interior, otherwise south of the Alaska Range and the western part of the state, pretty fair conditions with fairly light winds. And this front continues to weaken as it elongates out, stretches out over the eastern Aleutians, bringing some light precipitation, possibly as far east as False Pass. And then winds slowly diminishing for the western Aleutians as that low weakens. And then for first day of the weekend, that system just washes out completely here with the remnants of the front right through here. Another system comes in, but staying for the most part south of the Aleutian chain, although maybe some rain and snow for the central Aleutians, but winds not too bad. Colder air coming southward here on northeast winds from the Arctic, and that keeping it cold and dry and variably cloudy here for the eastern Bering Sea all the way up to the Bering Strait, as well as the western interior here, pretty clear and cold, more clouds and isolated snow showers here over the eastern interior, and definitely better conditions, still a little unsettled over the northern panhandle there with a weak trough. And this system pulling westward could bring some snow into the eastern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and possibly in the northern Cook Inlet by evening in the Matanuska Valley. Coastal water forecasts for tomorrow, south winds 35 to 40 knots for the southern panhandle. Central coast, gale warnings as well. East-southeast 35 to 40 knots, and then much lighter from the north coast, east-northeast at 15 to 20 knots. Lynn Canal, southeast 25, south 35 for the central and southern inner channels. And the outlook for Saturday on the south coast here, south to southeast at 15, south 20 knots for the central coast, north coast, southeast winds 25 knots. And for the inside waters, south winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Prince William Sound, northeast at 20 with 4-foot seas. Eastern North Gulf Coast, northeast 20 to 25 knots, north 20 there for the western North Gulf Coast. And the strongest winds will be Kamishak Bay, blowing across the Barren Islands there at 30 knots. Variable north winds for Cook Inlet at 10 to 15 knots. And for the day Saturday, Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, again, northwest winds 30 to 35 knots. Cook Inlet, north to northeast at 10. Prince William Sound, northeast winds 10 knots. Light variable winds here for the western North Gulf Coast, but winds a little on the brisk side for the eastern North Gulf Coast there, east-northeast at 25 to 30 knots. Kodiak Island, northwest winds 25 knots for Friday. In Bristol Bay, northwest at 15. The Alaska Peninsula, northeast to northwest winds at 15 to 20 knots. For Saturday, the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. North at 15 for Bristol Bay, and west-northwest for Kodiak Island, it's 30 knots. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, east to southeast winds 25 to 30 knots. And then west winds here. Obviously, the front right through here, winds becoming west in the afternoon for Adak and Atka at 30 to 35 knots, and then out toward that weakening, but still pretty strong low center here. Storm warnings, south to southwest winds 45 to 55 knots with higher gusts, and southwest winds 40 to 45 knots from Chitka Island. And then those winds really lighten up on Saturday, east-southeast 15 to 20 knots from Kiska to Shemya, and 20 to 25 knot winds from the south of the central Aleutians. And the eastern Aleutians, kind of a variable wind pattern out here at 15 to 20 knots. Southwest coast, north winds 15 to 20 knots. St. Lawrence Island, north winds at 20 knots. And brisk wind advisories for Norton Sound. And for St. Matthew Island, northeast winds 15 knots, and the Pribilofs east at 20. And then the Pribilofs on Saturday, northeast at 15 with 12-foot seas, northeast 25 with 14-foot seas for St. Matthew Island. Norton Sound, still looking at brisk wind advisories for north winds at 25 knots. And St. Lawrence Island and the southwest coast, north winds 20 knots. For tomorrow, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west winds 15 knots. And the central and western Arctic coast, northwest at 10, and the Chukchi Sea, north winds 20 to 25 knots. Those winds about the same for Saturday, north to northeast at 20 knots for the Chukchi Sea, northeast at 10 for the western Arctic coast, central coast, north at 10, and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west northwest at 15 to 20.